Hi, and welcome to the credibility gap, the hole our leaders have fallen into by not standing up for our rights as citizens, and how we can help them climb out. First, today I want to start a new little segment called The Road to Autocracy. And these are just a few news headlines that I came across that I thought people might want to look into more. And if not, at least you'll know the headlines. So, number one, U.S. citizens are being deported without due process. Number two, deportations without due process to Libya and Rwanda are being considered. Number three, students on visas are being rounded up by masked men. I don't know why they have to wear masks. And are being detained for protected speech. That is contrary to what the administration wants to hear. Again, without due process. Number four, the Civil Rights Act is being further dismantled, and I'll have more about that maybe next time. And five, the administration has fired 4-star generals and admirals to make room for promoting people who are loyal to Trump. This is very scary, because if our military is not loyal to the Constitution, we're in trouble. Okay, that's it for the road to autocracy. And now, part 2 of woke. The second vernacular meaning I found of woke is empathy. Woke equals empathy. Empathy is different from sympathy and compassion. And I found this little piece online. I'm not sure who it's attributed to, but I want to read it to you. Empathy involves understanding and sharing the feelings of another person, actually feeling their feelings, while sympathy is feeling pity or sorrow for someone else's misfortune without necessarily sharing their feelings. Compassion, on the other hand, goes a step further, and it includes a desire to help those who are suffering. Somehow, how empathy's gotten twisted into a conservative epithet used to criticize liberals and progressives. I kind of get that, but how did it get to be a sin? I put a lot of the responsibility for that on social media, plus Fox News, which I try not to watch, but I do have to once in a while. And the need by conservatives to polarize our discussions by seeing the other side, us, as ideological enemies. I hope we don't see them as ideological enemies. It seems some fundamentalist Christians or evangelical Christians have come to the conclusion that empathy is not only sinful, it's dangerous. You can find videos of sermons about this on YouTube, as well as books on the topic. I mean, Elon Musk has even weighed in on empathy recently, and he didn't like it either. I'll talk more about why empathy could be a problem for some folks in a bit. But first, I want to briefly touch on some research attributed to Dr. Jonathan Haidt, who is a social psychologist, an author. He teaches at the Stern School of Business at New York University. He's a researcher of morality and personal emotions, best known for his foundations of morality theory. You can see many YouTube videos and TED Talks by him. He's quite in demand. But new research by Dr. Haidt has been interpreted by conservatives as conservatives have empathy for those closest to them, their family, their church, etc., and ignore groups of other people other than they are. That brings to mind a story. I remember watching a show with an evangelical Christian years ago about the street children of Bogota, Colombia, being hunted by death squads in cars who are shooting at them and killing them. They actually took to living in the sewer. My companion said, "I'm glad I'm one of God's chosen people, not like them." I said, "Do you actually believe some God chose for these children to be hunted like rats?" She did. That's how she interpreted the teachings of her faith. This encounter has stuck with me for a long time, as you can tell. I think believing one is chosen for salvation, spiritual, physical, financial, whatever, over others, permits those believers to absolve themselves of having empathy for others, not like them. It allows them to distance themselves from those others and only associate with people in their groups. This can lead them to be hyper-focused on themselves, their families, pardon me, perhaps even becoming controlling or repressive, which I've heard that criticism of evangelical Christians a lot. They probably say that about us too. Anyway, the reason it can be a problem for conservative fundamentalist folks is empathy creates cognitive dissonance when viewing the suffering of others. Cognitive dissonance is a feeling of confusion when what a person sees or feels is different from their values, what they've been told to believe. So the only way out of cognitive dissonance, and it's very uncomfortable, I'm sure most of you know what that feels like. The only way out is to change your values or what you believe, or stuff your feelings, pretend you're not seeing what you're actually seeing. I can see why their leaders fear empathy in their followers and why they discourage it or label it as sinful, because it can lead to compassion. That's right, empathy leads to compassion. I mean, what if instead of cheering or nodding smugly as migrants are led to airplanes in shackles like criminals, which most of them are not, to be deported with no sense of dignity, not even drinking water or toilets on their journeys? MAGA would have empathy and its action partner compassion. They might see people who are needing refuge from persecution, starvation, violence, and other things as people needing our empathy and compassion. And by the way, nobody wants to move across a continent or to another continent. They only do that when they're desperate. Most people don't travel 50 to 100 miles from their homes, except maybe for a vacation once in a while, in their entire lifetimes. So when people begin moving across countries and continents, there's really something wrong with their home life, their ability to stay in the place of their birth. So what if MAGA started seeing the homeless with empathy? What if they looked on them not as public health and safety risks or degenerates who have only themselves to blame for their condition, but as unfortunate or mentally ill people? And what about the working poor? Those folks are living in their cars, looking for a safe place to park every night. Don't they deserve some empathy and compassion? And here's a real flashpoint. But what if MAGA saw trans people through the eyes of empathy and compassion as human beings, whether they think they're misguided or not, who want the same rights as we are all entitled to under our Constitution? Instead of seeing them as evil activists trying to take away the rights of others and indoctrinate children. Trust me, nobody who is trans or gay ever would try to recruit somebody else into their lifestyle. They know how hard it is to live that way and how dangerous it can be. But that's who they are, and that's all they want for other people, is to be able to live as who they are. I do believe there's a teeny tiny issue with trans athletes, and I mean teeny tiny, in high school and college sports. I looked it up, and there's a very small percentage of total team sports that are trans. In college sports, it's less than 100 people in the entire country, and in high school sports, there are only 5 known trans athletes who want to compete in their schools. We need data on hormones and physical conditioning to resolve these controversies. But until we get it, I think we can come up with some common sense compromises. And lastly, what if MAGA saw death row inmates as humans who have a right to life, and even possibly were wrongly convicted, instead of touting their executions as the best way to deter crime, which it is not. The research clearly shows that death penalty states do not have less crime than non-death penalty states. And it's very expensive to execute somebody. It takes tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars and many years to get through all the appeals processes, which they deserve. Although I'm not religious, it's really hard to imagine Jesus, the Buddha, the prophet, others, without empathy. And the Dalai Lama, who's the head of the Tibetan faction of the Buddhist faith, has made it his life's work to encourage us all to practice compassion and what he calls loving kindness. Too often people come up with ways that they can escape this. I've actually heard that Bible verse, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God. And they use that to say, well, that's Caesar's business, that's the government's business, it's not mine, or that's somebody else's problem, it's not mine, the NIMBY situation. If the throngs of MAGA people cheering as the president bellows about protecting them from one feared outside group or another, they simply reclaimed their empathy and compassion, in other words, became woke, Trump would lose his hold on them. Realistically, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but if our leaders start climbing out of that credibility gap, it just might. Now, back to that interpretation by conservatives of Dr. Jonathan Haidt's research. Those interpreters say that liberals have too much empathy for groups not like them and ignore what's happening in their own families and communities. Maybe. That sure fits those stereotypes of the therapist, the teacher, the doctor, the court advocate worker, who give energy to groups of others and pay less attention to their own families. Some say they let their children run wild. They let their children become addicts or skip school. Empathy and its active sister compassion are a balancing act for conservatives and liberals alike. I'll definitely give you that. It's not an all or nothing proposition. It's not about rescuing people or telling them how to live their lives or how to end their suffering. That's called codependency, which may be a topic for another episode. It's about being with them, sitting with them, listening to them, and empowering them to come up with their own solutions, not telling them what to do. I just want to touch on some preliminary brain research here, which seems to show that conservatives have larger amygdalae. Yes, amygdalae is the plural of amygdala, and that's the feeling center of the brain. And liberals have larger prefrontal cortices, the thinking center of the brain. This would appear to say that conservatives may have a larger capacity for feelings, including empathy and compassion, than liberals do, due to a larger amygdala. Maybe in a perfect world, but in this world, in this country, I'm afraid many conservative amygdalae are too consumed by fear and anger to have much room for empathy and compassion. Does the supposed larger prefrontal cortex of a liberal person mean a lesser capacity for emotion in that person? No, actually not, because the thinking we do is triggered by emotions. The newest research shows that emotions probably occur a split second before a thought is triggered. My interpretation of this possible larger prefrontal cortex of liberals gives them the ability to think about their emotions before they act, more often than simply reacting to them. They can problem solve. They can self-regulate, which means they can tone down their feelings when necessary to keep from being manipulated by them or run by them. All right, it's time for the conclusion here. Are you surprised that I didn't mention cancel culture? While it's been associated with wokeness by both sides, and may even be a perversion of it in some people's minds, it really belongs in the free speech episode, and that's where you'll find it. So who's woke? Every person who cares about others and tries to help is woke. Remember Jane Fonda. Woke just means you give a damn about other people. Any people who are narcissists or sociopaths do not have the ability to be woke. The people who do have the ability and are conservatives, they can develop their critical thinking abilities, and they can learn the skills of empathy and compassion. And maybe if our leaders began to lead in that direction, that would happen. I hope they'll see that woke isn't a dirty word or a subject for ridicule. I'd really love to see everyone embrace the word woke, especially our leaders who are stuck in that credibility gap. Maybe we should have a little lapel pin we can all proudly wear to show that we give a damn about other people. It could say woke, maybe even spelled out in enamel letters covered by the American flag. Our leaders could wear that instead of the flag pins on their lapels. Wouldn't that be great to see everybody wearing one of those? We could all remind each other that we give a damn about other people. Thanks for listening. Please remember about contacting your leaders. If you haven't, please do. And if you have, please contact some more. Tell them about woke. Maybe even send them the links to these 2 episodes. Tell them empathy and compassion are the ladders that they can use to climb out of the credibility gap. Remember the leaders not running for re-election. I'll put a link to the website about them in the info box below, as well as a sample letter and a link to the contact information for all the representatives and senators. And please come back for the next episode, which is about free speech. While you get ready for that one, start thinking about due process and what that means for all people in the United States, citizens or not. That will be the episode after free speech. Please subscribe, leave a review if you can, and tell a friend. That's actually the most effective way of spreading the word about this podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you in the next episode.